in a day-long choir festival with 300 kids I had never met before, but instantly fell in love with. One sheepishly came up to me to admit in a small voice, "Dr. Rideout, I forgot. I lost my music." "You lost your music," I said, in the most overdramatic voice to try and get the sad kid to perk up a little and laugh. It wasn't such a big deal. "You lost your music? You lost all your favorite songs, you lost your voice, you lost everything that expresses itself from inside you. You lost the connection to the trees and everything that makes a poem in every one of your days. You lost all that? Where could you have put it?" I think he was a little embarrassed for me. "No, Dr. Rideout, that's not what I was talking about. I lost the piece of paper." Teaching me now. "I lost the piece of paper that we read from." "Ah," I said, "there's been some confusion. You have lost the score, not the music. The score you hold in your hands. The music we hold in our hearts." Welcome to this time of making good company together. Welcome to this time of community, if we dare. Welcome to this time where the individual strands of our lives can combine and weave themselves into a tapestry we call community and congregation. This is the holy work that meets us each time we gather. And it meets us the same just now. The world needs the same togetherness, if not even more. And though we are far apart and not in the building or in the room we associate with the memories of our community members and the company of our spiritual friends, know this: the church building was built with our hands, and that's a beautiful thing. But there's a deeper truth, that the congregation, the community, we are to hold with our hearts. This is an opportunity to render unto the earth some thanksgiving for breathing again at a time especially where that can't be taken for granted. It's a time now to share all of our emotions with ourselves and with each other, to show each other that we are not alone. And you and I can do this together, across time and across location. Let's sing together. Let's spend time in silence together. Let's pray together. Let's dialogue with one another. Let's start another conversation about what it means to be better citizens of the interdependent web that weaves our lives and holds all creation. This is the task of our hearts. The task of our hands is just as important. And I welcome your giving too, just like on any other Sunday. We'll do it a little bit differently this go round. And information will be posted on the screen as we spend this time together. I ask that you give deeply with your hands to the ongoing strength of this building that we call home. And I ask that you give from your heart a bit of compassion and send a little bit of love outside of your house, across the neighborhoods. There is a chance that we might weave community anyway. The chances are pretty good. Welcome to this sacred time, made sacred by our choosing to be together.
Beloved community of First Unitarian Universalist Congregation Ann Arbor, I want to add my words of welcome to those of Glen Thomas and offer just an additional word of preparation and building together of this time we'll be sharing. As many of you know, video and online formats such as this have not been a primary mode of our community for being together on Sunday morning. As such, this is my language and description of it, a modest initial offering, and we will be learning and growing together as we step into this format and build on it. I invite you into this time holding that with me, because I know I and the team, we approach our time together and this time of experimenting with humility in our hearts and with a full intention to learn and grow. We invite you to join us in that.
Hi, this is Reverend Lindasusan. I'm coming to you today from my home where I will be lighting the chalice. And I invite you into this practice, wherever you may be right now. And in times like this, such practices that unite us not only with each other, but across Unitarian Universalists all over the world are even more poignant, I think. So I invite you into the words that we use to light the chalice each week. We light this chalice for the light of truth. We light this chalice for the warmth of love. We light this chalice for the energy of action. We light this chalice for the harmony of peace. One of the other things that connects us every week are the covenants that we share, the promises that we make to each other about how we will be together. And even though we can't be together in person, we are still connected through our covenants, through our promises, through the shared community that we have built and will continue to build together. So I invite you into those words as well. Together, let us say, the spirit of this church is love, and service is its law. This is our covenant with each other, to dwell together in peace, to search for truth in love, and to help one another.
Hi everyone, I'm the Reverend Cassandra Hartley. Today we're talking about how we cope with this very uncertain time, how we do hard things, and how we do things in new ways that we never imagined before. And so I want to share a story about a little girl who was facing a big challenge of her own, and how she learned to overcome that challenge with the help of a good friend and some perseverance. The book is called The Most Magnificent Thing. This is a regular girl and her best friend in the whole wide world. They do all kinds of things together. They race, they eat, they explore, they relax. She makes things. He unmakes things. One day, the girl has a wonderful idea. She is going to make the most magnificent thing. She knows just how it will look. She knows just how it will work. All she has to do is make it, and she makes things all the time. Easy peasy. First, she hires an assistant. Next, they gather their supplies. They set up somewhere out of the way and get to work. The girl tinkers and hammers and measures, while her assistant pounces and growls and chews. When she is finished, she steps back to admire her work. She walks around one side. Her assistant examines the other side. It doesn't look right. Her assistant picks it up and gives it a shake. It doesn't feel right either. They are shocked to discover that the thing isn't magnificent, or good, or even kind of sort of okay. It is all wrong. The girl tosses it aside and gives it another go. She smooths and wrenches and fiddles. Her assistant circles and tugs and wags. When she is finished, she stands up and takes a long look at it. Her assistant gives it a nudge with his paw. The thing is still wrong. She decides to try again. The girl saws and glues and adjusts. She stands and examines and stares. She twists and tweaks and fastens. She fixes and straightens and studies. She tries all different ways to make it better. She makes it square. She makes it round. She gives it legs. She adds antenna. She makes it fuzzy. She makes it long, short, rough, smooth, big, small. One even smells like stinky cheese. But none of them are magnificent. Her hard work attracts a few admirers, but they don't understand. They can't see the magnificent thing she has in her mind. She gets mad. The angrier she gets, the faster she works. She smashes pieces into shapes. She jams parts together. She pummels the little bits in. Her hands feel too big to work, and her brain is too full of all the not right things. If only the thing would just work! Crunch! The pain starts in her finger. It rushes up to her brain, and she explodes! It is not her finest moment. I'm no good at this, she says. I quit. Her assistant suggests a walk. It's not much help at first. But before long, she starts to feel different. Bit by bit, the mad gets pushed out of her head. As they stroll along, she comes across the first wrong thing she made. The bad feelings are about to start all over again. Then she notices something surprising. There are some parts of the wrong things that are really quite right. The bolts on one, the shape of another, the wheel-to-seat ratio of the next. There are all sorts of parts that she likes. By the time she reaches the end of the trail, she finally knows how to make the thing magnificent. She gets to work. She works carefully and slowly, tinkering, hammering, twisting, fiddling, gluing, painting. Her assistant makes sure that there are no distractions. This is the perfect thing to ward off bears. This will stop that leak. This one's all wet. The afternoon fades into evening. Finally, she finishes. She alerts her assistant. The pair take a good long look. It leans a little to the left, and it's a bit heavier than expected. The color could use a bit of work too, but it's just what she wanted. She climbs aboard and takes it for a spin. They are not disappointed. It really is the most magnificent thing.
I got a text message from Adam yesterday that was a picture in Meijer because we needed some groceries, and the picture was of the empty meat shelves, and I was just struck at just how strewn and rapid the disappearance of food in this huge grocery store was. It made me think about the mountains of anxiety and frankly the panic and the rush of coming up to this pandemic so soon, so seemingly unexpectedly.
You know, in the run-up to our decision to close the physical building of the congregation from activities, I was immersed almost in a 24/7 CNN cycle of basically the same news. I mean, things were not really changing hour by hour. They were changing maybe on a day-to-day basis, but not hour by hour. And I spent about a week of my life immersed in COVID-19 24 hours a day almost, you know, during my waking day hours of those days. And it was awful. I could feel despair welling in me, this sense of panic that has been more than present in the broader world and society around us. I could feel all of that in me. It was humbling for me, and it created this deep sense of compassion of like, oh yeah, people are really probably freaking out. I'm absolutely freaking out. You know, I have to, if my inner energy starts to go that way, I have to stop myself and recalibrate and take some time to turn the news off and not buy in to the notion that I have to follow the 24-hour news cycle for every minute that I'm awake. I don't need to do that. I do need to keep up with the latest developments. That's a wise and smart thing to do right now. I don't need to obsessively track the same news that's just being repeated from between 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock and then 6 o'clock. I'd say a word about this broader sense of panic, though. You know my love for the horror genre and sci-fi genres, right?
You and me both.
Yeah. And our culture, our US culture, has been leading us towards understandings of panic and societal pandemonium for about 10 or 15 years. And it's been escalating. The amount of space that has been devoted to film and TV that are in some way depicting the end of times. I have believed for some time that metaphor speaks to underlying fears that we hold as a people, as a nation, around unsettledness. Things have been shifting and changing and transforming for some time. It's hard to talk about all that. It's hard to talk about our feelings. So we give it life on the screen or the television screen or movie screen in metaphor. So all of these things have been metaphor. But the challenge is that the current crisis, global crisis we're in, is in some way tapping on exactly the metaphors that we've been immersed in for 10, 15 years. And so if subconsciously, what have all those films and TV been telling us? People are untrustworthy. Criminal activity will go up. It's everybody fend for yourself. Empty out the stores. Protect your own resources. Protect yourself because things will be unreliable. It doesn't help from a psychological perspective that the languaging taps into all of those metaphors perfectly, right? The language of pandemic. Well, how's that different from epidemic? We're using the language of quarantine. Film and TV, that means plastic screens are down, you're people in hazard suits that can't touch you, right? That's epidemic from the movies and TV shows, right?
Because those are the stories we know.
Those are the stories we know about what an epidemic is, what a quarantine is. National emergency, state emergency. Okay, there's a practical component to that. We're now able to access the National Guard, Department of Defense resources. But on television and film, a national emergency means something else. It means that we are in end times, right? That's what this languaging means from our cultural reference points, that we are in end times. So there's a lot that I don't think this is conscious, I think it's subconscious. I think subconsciously these energies and metaphors can get conflated. It's understandable why. This is a very unsettled and uncertain time.
Yeah, the cinema reference was exactly what I was thinking about. You know, the movies I've seen. I'm thinking about living in Nashville. I did for 4 years, and there was this place, a plaza with a skyscraper that looked exactly like one of the sets for the film 28 Days Later. Do you know this?
Yes,
this
absolutely.
dystopian. And we called it the 28 Days Later Plaza because it looked exactly like it. And we would go there and relive those stories. And in some ways, I feel like what we're experiencing is we've been able to ride the roller coaster of fear and anxiety, and all of a sudden the movie is on our side of the screen.
Yes.
And that's causing some of the seizing and the shock. So let me ask you this. Conversely, are there stories then from our real world, our history, humankind, creation, the interdependent web that can speak some balance, or at least offer some wisdom to the day now?
Absolutely, and I found that I've been digging into kind of our own U.S. history to kind of see like what informs us during this time. You know, this is the last pandemic that our globe, our nation went through was before the lifetime of most of us. It was in 1918. It was the H1N1 version of the flu that kind of gripped the globe, and 60 million, 50 to 60 million people, something in that ballpark, died during about a year, over the course of about a year. And that is a staggering number. In the U.S. alone, the 1918 H1N1 pandemic, it killed like 626,000 people in the U.S. alone. And that was, our population at that time was about 103 million. So I did the little math on that. That's like somewhere between 0.5%, 0.75% of the U.S. population died in a year. And, you know, so I like history. So I was like, all right, so what do those numbers look like in comparison to other big things? You know, let's say 50 million people around the globe died of H1N1 in 1918. By comparison, the total number of deaths in World War I was 16 million. Total number of deaths in the globe, World War II, 75 million. So the H1N1 flu killed something in between the numbers of people that died in World War I globally, World War I and World War II. You know, what were the number of people that maybe have died from the AIDS epidemic? I've been touched by that on a personal level in multiple ways. And maybe there are many people. I was tempted to say almost like maybe most of the people in our community have known somebody who's died from AIDS. I don't know that for sure, but the potential impacts of COVID-19 are potentially on par with all of the deaths that have occurred due to HIV/AIDS. That's, I mean, you know, when you think of the history around that, it gives you pause to understand, like, this is really a big deal. It is as big of a deal as the culture and the world around us is reacting and telling us it is.
Yeah, I was going to say stunning, literally, just stopping one in one's tracks, and then when the narratives and stories around you are from cinema are telling you that the way that you respond to this is with more fear and more panic. It's no wonder why there is so much fear, anxiety, discombobulation in the system. You know, I know that I was always taught when you do the work of ministry, you have to pastor to the people who show up, right? And you know, so there are these staggering truths that stun each of us, and there are all of the feelings and emotions that come out of them. How in the world are you thinking into embracing the truths of the feelings people are having, the emotions people are having, the lives that people are having in these days.
Absolutely. Like, I think one of the things that became very clear to me, crystal clear, there are facts, there's science, and then there are the feelings. And feelings really matter right now. I mean, that feeling of panic that I know that I have felt, it may or may not be connected to historical or medical facts. And in fact, when I'm in that place of panic, feeling or holding some level of panic, it doesn't matter. I don't even care. I don't care what the historical or medical facts may be. I mean, most of us might be okay at the end of the day on the other side of COVID-19. It still doesn't dissipate the feelings around it. It's clear to me that we're in a time where the intensity of those feelings, for me, I cannot, if I'm on autopilot and I'm just in that 24/7 news cycle, absorbing and reacting to every ounce of information around me, I have already seen what that does to me, and I'm not my best self. I'm not well grounded. I am deeply unsettled, and I'm fearful. So one of the things that's clear to me is spiritual practice of whatever kind. And I often say from the pulpit that there are as many spiritual practices as there might be people, because what's going to work for each of us is going to be different. But drawing on the thing that we know will calm our inner self, our soul, our essence, that sense of inner being of who we are, and the deepest wisdom that we know. What brings you to that? What calms you and moves you into that? That's really critical right now. Yesterday alone, I think I turned to meditation 3 or 4 times over the course of yesterday. I don't normally meditate. That is not my practice. It's usually once a day. But I felt so ungrounded multiple times during the day. I just kept having to go back to whatever tools I had to remind myself that, look, on this very day, when there are people who are struggling to breathe, that is their reality. I have breath. My breath is unimpeded. The breath of those I love today, right now, is unimpeded. Those are gifts. When people are literally dying because they can't breathe, those are gifts. I'm okay right now in this moment. I found myself thinking of 9/11 as it was unfolding, as I lived through that day. That was actually my first day of seminary.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. The convocation of my seminary class was that week.
That's wow.
Yes, and so that fundamentally life-changing event, that event that changed the course of our nation's history, that has come to define us as a people in so many ways. In the moment, I wasn't clear what was going on. I was confused. I think about Ferguson, Missouri, and that particular summer when the events there happened. And same thing, in the moment. Now, years later, yes, unmistakable, nationally historic history-defining moment, globally defining moment, culturally defining moment. But in the moment, I felt confusion. I didn't understand the full context, the full historicity of what was happening, right? We are in the middle of this thing right now. We're not, actually, I don't even know that we're in the middle. We may still be in the early half of what is unfolding around COVID-19. Trying to arrive at any definitive understanding of this is what this means right now, this is where we're going, this is the full impact, this is what it means for us. It's not even possible. And yet the human mind in the midst of uncertainty wants to grasp for any definitiveness that it can find. And so the definitiveness will become opinions, judgments, senses of what this time is and what it means. And the thing I know for a fact, it will be months, if not years, until we're able to really look back and be clear about what the historicity of this time right now that we are living through, the full impact of what it is, the fullness of what it has meant emotionally and spiritually will only be clear to us much later. Simply holding the openness. We may be totally right. We may be totally wrong. It may be some mixture of both. Holding the openness that we are not clear what the moment is right now, and we're having a lot of feelings and opinions and judgments around it. That is healthy. Honor the feelings and can we create just a little bit of space? We may be totally right, we may be totally wrong, we may be something in between. All right, recognize all of that, hold all of that. How do we ground then how do we come back to grounding ourselves in the deeper wisdom that we hold?
Yeah, I had the example of that in my life just yesterday. I have opened my email inbox every single day for the last week to 50 some emails from everywhere, from the church to the denomination to the pizza place, who want to tell me how they're dealing with COVID, and it was my grandmother's 76th birthday. Those two things were both very true, and it was also very true that I needed to call my grandmother, and whether or not we talked about it, about COVID and who was staying where. I think that's sage advice. The room to breathe reminds us that there are still responsibilities that matter, right? My grandmother needs a call. Community needs answers. We need to be there for one another, whether this is the truth or not. I wholeheartedly agree. Which then leads me to the thought that I've been having several times a day, every day, as a member of a community. I'm thinking this one, I'm thinking my family. What is my role in those community units? How do I use the tools that were built for me, based on embraces and being close to people? How do I now use that when I can't venture beyond my door? I don't stop wanting to make love real in the world. Where do you start in the deciphering process? Any thoughts on where to begin?
We don't dismiss our feelings, which includes feelings of uncertainty or fear or panic. We don't have to give in to the feelings either. We get to be fully human. And part of what his sense of being fully human led him to was we are not only the feelings of uncertainty or fear. There's more to us. There's the justice-seeking part of us. There's the loving and caring and relational parts of us, right? So if I'm caught up in that 24/7 news cycle, starting to feel that growing sense of panic or despair inside, I'm actually ignoring the fullness of my humanity. Right. My kids are okay. They're in my house with me. My spouse is okay today, right? So I'm ignoring huge swaths of the fullness of my own humanity and my family's humanity. So how do we step into this vocation of being fully human in this time of profound uncertainty, of unfolding history that we're in the midst of? Paulo Freire developed this pedagogy of love. Yeah, pedagogy of the oppressed, but also, part of that was that sense of pedagogy was a fullness of love as well. How are we teaching? Pedagogy is about teaching. And at heart, I'm an educator. I never really got those credentials, but I
was just about to say
that's deeply who I am.
Yeah.
I'm an educator. And so for me, teaching is about embodying and modeling and leading in a certain way. So pedagogy of love, what does it mean to embody? What does it mean to create and lead and role model love in the midst of being a part of unfolding history that is uncertain and inspiring fear in so many of us. And for me, that means bring it alive. Bring it alive in whatever ways you can. Bring alive love. Bring alive compassion. A critical component of love is forgiveness. I know I have not been my best, wisest, most grounded self in the midst of all of this at all times. I would trust that that's probably true for many of us. And if that is true for many of us, we're relying heavily on the compassion and forgiveness of others who can see that, yeah, this is a deeply stressed out time. This is a deeply anxious time. Embody the love, embody the compassion, embody the forgiveness as deeply and as well as we can, even as we're trying to calm down our own inner energy, move back into our deepest sense of groundedness and wisdom. Small acts of love are not small right now. They're not. And I have been moved by how what in other times would be such small gestures are meaning so much to me right now. You know, my what I would call extended family of choice, people in Finland have been reaching out to me. I had a video call with one beloved sister of mine today, and we talked. And it wasn't for long, but we shared how her life is in the midst of a pandemic and the lockdown she's experiencing, and what my life and fears are and uncertainties are right now. It mattered that we thought of each other, that we didn't carve out immense time for that. We didn't do that for 3 hours. It was half an hour, if that. And yet that small expression, that small embodiment of love buoyed me today. It made me feel like, okay, I can go back and turn my attention to the work of caring for community and trying to build community in this deeply fearful and deeply uncertain time.
Yeah. It's like your first Christmas Eve service here. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. That's where, yeah, I mean, you almost, it was prophecy, right? For this moment, but also for others. You know, the hymn says, make channels for the streams of love that they may broadly run, because love gives energy to love. We give energy to each other that way. But I remember you were saying, call somebody.
Yes.
You don't have to carve out a lot of time. Call somebody who you need to call and have a conversation with, because no act of love is ever wasted.
Yes.
And that's what a faith statement, especially for a day like today and all the todays that are about to come.
So on Sunday mornings, in between services, I go into the Jackson Chapel and I sit on the floor, and I'm surrounded by a group of young musicians. And we gather in a somewhat circular circle, and we sit together. Although some of us are kneeling, some of us are laying down on our backs, some are squirmy, a little bit bouncy, but we've gathered together in our space. And we begin by sharing what is on our minds. And for some, we want to share what's been happening that has been happy for us. Maybe it's a birthday, maybe it's a special holiday, maybe it was a trip to visit someone. But we also share those things that are perhaps sad. Maybe it was the death of a grandparent, or a pet that has been lost, or someone we know we haven't been able to connect to. So in all of those things, we bring them into the circle, and then someone lights our chalice, and we decide to breathe. And we breathe together. We breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. When I breathe in peace. When I breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out. And with that, simple ritual of gathering, our opening time together, a ritual of breath and light and sound and silence. We come together and we know that we are one in community. And I'm going to invite us all now to engage in a similar kind of ritual, something that is simple and yet powerful, something that is indeed a magnificent thing that we are creating together. I'm going to ask us to do this no matter the distance we are from each other, no matter what our fears are, the fears of the unknown, no matter what griefs we are bringing, no matter our anxieties, and recognizing that our anxieties for each of us is different. My anxieties are different than yours. The intensity with which I feel my anxieties is different than yours. But at the same time, we also want to bring into this circle our joys and our delights. It's very important to remember those things that bring us happiness. Perhaps it's a special anniversary, or maybe a child's first words, or just things that make us laugh, stories that we share. It's important to have this balance between those things that are weighing heavily on us and those things that are uplifting our spirit. So in a moment, we're going to hold a couple minutes of silence together. And during that time, I'm going to hold some stones. And these stones will represent what we are bringing to this circle. It's what I'm bringing, and it's what all of you are bringing. And I'm going to invite you to speak out loud into your heart those things that are in your mind and on your mind. And we're going to hold the silence together as we do that. Spirit of infinitely expanding love, we are grateful for the privilege of being in community with one another during this time of great uncertainty. May your presence help keep us centered and aware so that from a place of calm, we can have strength of spirit for the days and months to come. May we remember that isolation for the greater good is not equally embraced by all, and so may we be gentle with each other and ourselves as we learn to navigate this time together, and yet strong in purpose and resolve as we help those in need, even as we may need to ask for help. May we be blessed with creative energy to do the work that needs doing. Spirit of infinite compassion, hear the prayers of this community, lighten the weight that each of us bears, lessen our frustrations, give us strength to act from a place of love and kindness always. Amen, Ashe, and may it be so.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me?
I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, with all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you,
I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony. Sisters, we can make such sweet harmony.
Hey! Woo! Air 5!
Yeah, wait it out.
As we close out our time together today, I want to share with you the words of one of my mentors, the Reverend Mark Bellatini. I understand from our worship team that he personally delivered these words of benediction from our pulpit some years ago. He writes, "Go in peace. Live simply, gently, at home in yourselves. Act justly, speak justly. Remember the depth of your own compassion. Forget not your power in these days of powerlessness. Practice forbearance. Speak the truth or speak not. Take care of yourselves as bodies, for your bodies are a good gift. Crave peace for all people in the world, beginning with yourselves. And go as you go, with the dream of that peace alive in your heart. Go in love, take care of yourselves, until we see each other again.